Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Charna.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called the IDF strike that killed 45 Palestinians in Gaza a tragic mistake. But he has promised to never wave the white flag of defeat as he rejects all domestic and international calls to end the war. Meanwhile, Hamas officials have said that there would be no solution without a complete and comprehensive end to Israel's aggression. We'll of course be tracking all of that on the show today.
Also on the show, Russia is all set to build a small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, the first such plant in post-Soviet Central Asia. What's the significance of the project and how will it further increase Russia's influence in the region? Of course, how will the West be responding to that? We will be discussing this with our special guest right here on World DNA. Stay tuned for that. Let's get you started with the headlines.
Netanyahu says, and I'm quoting here, a tragic mistake was made in Israeli strike in southern Gaza's Rafah that set ablaze camp housing displaced Palestinians and reportedly killed at least 45.
Iran further increases its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. Watchdog IAEA adds that Raisi's death has triggered pause in talks with Iran.
Russia to build a small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, first such plant in post-Soviet Central Asia, says Uzbek president after meeting with Putin.
South Korea's military releases footage of what it says is the moment North Korea's latest attempt at launching satellite ended in failure.
Papua New Guinea evacuates 7,900 as fears of new landslide grow. Meanwhile, government says more than 2,000 were buried alive in Friday's landslide.
At least 10 killed and millions left without power as severe cyclone Ramal lashes Bangladesh coasts with devastating winds of up to 120 kilometers per hour and storm surges inundating hundreds of villages.
Mercury rises in northern India. Number of heat stroke patients in state of Rajasthan climbs to 3,622 amid intense heat wave in the state.
A Spanish court rules UEFA and FIFA were wrong to ban clubs from joining the breakaway European Super League. The judge says that the football governing bodies abused their position and prevented free competition. Israeli strikes on an encampment housing the displaced Palestinians in Rafah has caused international outcry.
Right, Shimon, leaders from all over the world are condemning the Israeli action. The strike killed at least 45, most of them women and children.
Now, amid the widespread outrage, Prime Minister Netanyahu has called the strike a tragic incident and said that his government was investigating the situation. However, he remains adamant to not stop the war.
I would like to clarify, I am not ready to surrender and fold. I am not ready to end the war before all its objectives are completed. our heroes did not fall in vain. If we surrender, the massacre, the rape and murder of October 7th will repeat itself again and again and again, just as Hamas promised.
Footage released by the Palestinian Red Crescent Society on the night of the attack, it showed chaotic nighttime scenes of ambulances racing to the attack site and evacuating the wounded, including children, as Palestinians cleared the site on Monday. Only blackened metal sheeting and charred planks remained, the tent shelters having been all but reduced to rubble.
On the other hand, Hamas has condemned the attack and reaffirmed its stance on removal of Israeli forces from all over Gaza. During a press conference, the militant group also underlined that the recent Rafah attack signals Israel's defiance of the World Court's ruling.
The timing of carrying out these massacres during the past 2 days is considered a defiance by the neo-Nazi government of the criminal Netanyahu to the International Court of Justice's decision that ordered the cessation of the military operation in the city of Rafah.
Meanwhile, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has denounced Israel's deadly attack on civilians and said that the attack took the lives of the people taking shelter from the ongoing war.
In further developments, Amnesty International has urged the International Criminal Court to investigate 3 other recent Israeli strikes that killed 44 civilians as war crimes in Deir al-Balah. In the strikes on April 16th, 32 children were among those killed. And in the Red Sea situation, of course, along with that, it remains tense. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis said on Monday that they launched attacks on 3 ships and 2 US destroyers in the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea region. The group, which describes its attacks as acts of solidarity with Palestinians, said the ships were the Desert and the MSC Mashallah in the Indian Ocean and the Minerva Lisa in the Red Sea. It did not name the US destroyers. Russian troops in thousands are lining up along northwest of Kharkiv in Ukraine, and this is a statement which was made by the Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky.
And this as he renews his plea for permission to target them with missiles supplied by Western allies. Well, Zelensky said that satellite images show Russian forces building up near Ukraine's Sumy city, and that the areas from where Russian combat aircraft take off and missiles are launched that are already located.
But Ukrainian forces are not allowed to strike targets inside Russia with Western missiles. This is what Zelensky reiterated. He said the restraint on attacking the Russian troops in their territory is providing the Russian forces a safe space for ground attacks and preparations and firing missiles at Ukrainian cities. Zelensky warned that after Kharkiv, now Kremlin is planning to attack Sumy city.
As his troops struggle to hold back Russia's invasion forces, Ukrainian leader continues to seek more military aid from his Western allies.
Zelensky is visiting Belgium to sign a security pact with Prime Minister Alexander De Croo. And that's after he visited Spain on Monday and signed a security pact with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez that allocates $1.08 billion military support to Ukraine within this year. Furthermore, Ukraine's top commander Alexander Syrskyi has said that French military instructors would soon arrive in the country to train Ukrainian servicemen. After talks via video link with French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu, he said paperwork to enable the first French instructors to visit Ukrainian training centers has been signed.
Meanwhile, Russia claims to have captured 2 villages in Ukraine. In a video released by the Russian Defense Ministry, military officials said that they have captured Ivanivka in the Kharkiv region and Netyolov in the Donetsk region. Russia launched a major new ground assault on the northeastern Kharkiv region 2 weeks ago. Russia has also claimed to have downed a drone outside Moscow. Andrei Vorobyev, the governor of the Moscow region, said that air defenses downed a drone in Balashka, leading to its debris falling on a house, but nobody was hurt in the incident as the house was evacuated in time. Well, Kiev has hit Russian cities with drones for months during Moscow's offensive in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, in Kharkiv, prosecutors shared footage of weekend missile attacks that left 16 dead. Security camera footage showed the moment when a large construction supplies store was hit by Russian missiles. At least 16 people were killed and dozens more were injured in the twin missile strikes that hit the store on a Saturday.
Russia has announced to build a nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan. A deal has been signed in Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to Uzbekistan.
According to the Kremlin, Russian state nuclear firm Rosatom will build up to 6 nuclear reactors with a capacity of 55 megawatts each in Uzbekistan. And this is, however, a smaller scale project than the 2.4 gigawatts one agreed in 2018, which remains to be finalized. Putin said Russia will put $400 million into a joint investment fund of $500 million to finance the projects in Uzbekistan.
If implemented, the deal will showcase Russia's ability to export high-tech goods to new Asian markets amid sanctions by the Western countries. The move is being seen as Russia extends influence in Central Asia in competition with West. Essentially, Uzbekistan has tripled its exports of uranium products to the European Union market in the past year.
Uzbek President Mirziyoyev called it the first such project in post-Soviet Central Asia. Interestingly, there are no nuclear power plants in any of the 5 ex-Soviet Central Asian republics, although Uzbekistan and its neighbor Kazakhstan, both uranium producers, have long said their growing economies needed them.
For more on this, Professor Peter Kuznick is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Professor Kuznick is History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Professor Kuznick. Now, Russia is all set to build a small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, a first such plant in Central Asia. Talk to us about the significance of the project and how perhaps it will further increase Russia's influence in the region.
Globally now, we see a trend toward building more and more nuclear energy. Most people believe that that is relatively safe and much more environmentally friendly. Russia and China have both been expanding the number of nuclear facilities that they're building around the world. So on the one hand, this is in that context. But it's also part of the competition with the U.S. in Central Asia. The United States has tried to make more and more inroads through trade in that region, but the Russians are showing that they can match them technologically and is not ready to relinquish influence in that region. So on the one hand, you can see it in that context. In the broader nuclear context now, we've got a very alarming trend taking place, and that's this game of nuclear chicken that's occurring. On the battlefield, Ukraine is losing more and more ground as Russia is gaining. And that is making many of the NATO countries feel quite desperate right now. We've got 2 kinds of threats going on. On the one hand, we've got Macron and others calling for sending NATO troops into Ukraine, both as trainers and in combat in certain circumstances. And then on top of that, we've got the Cameron and Blinken and Stoltenberg and the Poles and the Estonians saying that the Ukrainians should be allowed to use Western weapons to hit inside of Russia.
Yes.
Now that is very dangerous because Putin's response is these tactical nuclear weapons drills on Ukraine's border. So we see nuclear escalation going on both sides in this nuclear chicken game that could lead to World War III. So we're at a very alarming moment. The positive use of nuclear energy and nuclear power that we're seeing right now in Uzbekistan is one thing, but the threatened use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine or more broadly is much more alarming to me right now.
Right, Professor Kuznik, Uzbekistan has tripled uranium exports to the European Union in the past year. The question being that will Russia's move impact Uzbekistan's uranium export to Europe?
Russia will be actually selling more and more oil and gas to Uzbekistan, which previously had been exporting oil and gas. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan have both said that they need nuclear power, that their oil and gas supplies should not be exported. They need them internally, but they also need nuclear power to meet their demand. And Russia is in a prime position. Rosatom, the Russian nuclear agency, has been exporting a lot of nuclear power. So they're in a very strong position technologically, economically, politically, to carry this out right now.
Peter, do you feel the sanctions that the West imposed on Russia have drawn Russia to improve more foreign ties more aggressively? And what kind of response do you feel we can expect from the West after the recent announcement?
The West's ability to hurt Russia with sanctions has proven to be surprisingly limited. Russia has been opening up trade with the East, orienting away from the West. And so now they've got increased trade, as you know, with India, with China, with Eastern Europe, with Africa, with other Asian countries. So Russia has its own strategy, which has been working, whereas countries like Britain and Germany are showing signs of economic decline. Russia is actually showing signs of economic growth. So Russia has not been hurt, but in the long run, this has not been positive for Russia's economy. What Russia's done is been building up its military-industrial complex. Well, that can work in the short run, but in the long run, it's not producing the kinds of goods that people need to raise their standard of living. And so in the long run, this will not be beneficial for Russia. But in the short run, it has been working.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, sir. There was a lot of insight and some foresight as well from Peter Kuznik, who joined us from Washington. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
All right, we move further from your French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Europe to defend themselves better against enemies and not just depend on the US.
Right, and he said this at a ceremony in the German city of Dresden. Macron called for a strong and sovereign Europe. Take a listen.
Nous devons bâtir ensemble.
That makes a more independent and more sovereign Europe. A Europe that can defend itself and stand up for itself. A Europe that can survive in the face of all threats. This is what we must build now. This is the possible Europe of peace and common security.
Et d'innovation à construire ensemble en européen.
Macron visited Dresden as a part of his ongoing 3-day official visit to Germany due to end today. Now, addressing the youth in Dresden, Macron also responded to the threat of Russian aggression and to rethink its defense strategy, given Moscow's invasion of Ukraine.
Regardons autour de nous.
We Europeans want peace, a lasting peace. In other words, a peace that the Ukrainians, because we will have allowed them to defend themselves, will have chosen and negotiated. A peace that respects their sovereignty. A peace that respects international law, a chosen and lasting peace. Peace does not mean Ukraine's capitulation.
Mais oublions la liberté de la presse.
In terms of trade, the French president said that Europe had become more sovereign and more independent with respect to competition from China and the US.
Europe is the last place where we are open to the rest of the world without European preference or rules. Go to China, go to the United States. We trade, we want to develop trade, but there are national preferences. So I say to you, we need a European strategy that builds a European preference in defense, in space, that builds a European purchasing strategy.
Macron's trip comes 2 weeks ahead of European Union elections. Polls are indicating a major potential embarrassment for the French leader, with his centrist coalition trailing behind the far right. It could even struggle to reach a third-place finish. In Germany as well, all three parties in Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition are polling behind the far right in surveys.
While Macron is a frequent visitor to Germany, as Paris and Berlin, they try to coordinate their positions on EU and foreign policy. This is the first state visit with full pomp since Jacques Chirac came in 2000. And it also comes ahead of European Parliament elections next month. Well, Macron said that fear of a changing world is feeding a rise of the far right in Europe. Scores of UK business leaders have signed a letter endorsing the Labour Party's economic plans.
The support letter, which comes ahead of the country's July general elections, is another indication towards a possible Labour takeover. At least 121 founders, CEOs, former leaders across industries, including retail, manufacturing and financial services, are amongst the signatories. They have shown confidence that the Labour Party has changed and is willing to work with businesses on long-term growth.
A similar move was pulled by the Tories in 2015. Over 100 business leaders endorsed the Conservatives, of which a few are batting for the Labour Party for the 2024 elections. Former Heathrow Airport Chief Executive John Holland and Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales are amongst the many who are in support of the Labour. The party's shadow chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said that this endorsement will garner larger public trust and support for the party.
Meanwhile, the Tories have vowed to raise tax-free pension allowance if they are brought back in power. Under the proposal, the allowance will increase by 2.5% and be in line with the rising inflation. Under the programme, the Tories will also cut their taxes by over $125. The ambitious project will cost over $30 billion a year by 2029-2030. Separately, Labour leader Keir Starmer has lashed out at the Tories. It comes after the Conservatives claimed, and I'm going to quote here, that Starmer lacks enough stamina for the campaigning. Starmer called the claims desperate.
Got the pledges out there? Yeah. The amount of information you've got, promises you've got.
Papua New Guinea is evacuating an estimated 7,900 people living near the site of the deadly landslide which took place last week.
The Enga province hillside community was nearly eradicated when a portion of Mount Mongolo collapsed early Friday morning, destroying homes and killing scores of people sleeping inside them.
Now, according to the National Disaster Centre, Friday's landslide buried more than 2,000 people. But only 5 bodies have been pulled from the rubble so far. Satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies captured before and after images of the catastrophic incident that reveal the scale of the catastrophe.
Rescue efforts to dig out possible survivors buried under the rubble are facing major dangers and challenges. A United Nations official said on Monday, rescuers are battling in the face of bad weather conditions and the risk of further landslides. And well, it's now time for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, when we come back, we bring you more updates. At least 19 people have been killed across the central United States. This as tornadoes and other extreme storms hit several states, including Texas, Arkansas and Oklahoma. We'll get you the full report.
Also on the other side, no respite from rising heat for India. The Indian Met Department is expecting a minimum 4 to 6 days of heat wave in the region next month. This story and a lot more on the other side of this short break. You stay with us. You're watching Beyond World this one.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
Africa's youngest nation goes to the polls in December as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic organization urges rebels to surrender by dropping hundreds of thousands of flyers from a helicopter above their strongholds in dense rainforests. And an ancient game called Kora promotes unity and tradition in Algeria's mountains. Watch Wild of Africa at these times on WION. Wild is one.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Resha and me, Shivan. Let's get you started with the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour.
Netanyahu says, and I'm quoting here, a tragic mistake was made in Israeli strike in southern Gaza's Rafah that set ablaze camp housing displaced Palestinians and reportedly killed at least 45.
Iran further increases its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. Watchdog IAEA adds that Raisi's death has triggered pause in talks with Tehran.
Russia to build small nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, first such plant in post-Soviet Central Asia, says Uzbek president after meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
South Korea's military releases footage of what it says is the moment North Korea's latest attempt at launching satellite ended in failure.
Papua New Guinea evacuates 7,900 as fears of new landslide grow. Meanwhile, government says more than 2,000 were buried alive in Friday's landslide.
Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina makes explosive revelation, claims she was offered hassle-free re-election in the January 7th polls if she allowed a foreign country to build an airbase inside Bangladeshi territory.
At least 10 killed and millions left without power as severe cyclone Ramal lashes Bangladesh coast with devastating winds of up to 120 km per hour and storm surges inundating hundreds of villages.
Mercury soars in northern India. Number of heat stroke patients in the state of Rajasthan climbed to 3,622 amid intense heat wave.
A Spanish court rules UEFA and FIFA were wrong to ban clubs from joining the breakaway European Super League. The judge says that the football governing bodies abused their position and prevented free competition. Most parts of northwest India will not get respite from the scorching heat in June, even as there is a brief relief after 3 days due to western disturbances.
The Indian Meteorological Department is expecting a minimum 4 to 6 days of heat wave in the region next month as well. Many other parts of the country too will face above normal maximum and minimum temperatures during the month. Temperatures in 17 locations breached 48 degrees Celsius on Monday, with the relentless heat affecting health and livelihoods across large parts of northwestern and central India.
The national capital stayed under the grip of rising heat as maximum temperatures in parts of the city crossed 48 degrees Celsius. The Met Department said that the city was on red alert on Monday and will remain so for the next 3 days. The IMD has predicted a higher number of heat wave days in northwest India and adjoining parts of the central region in the month of June, except for a few parts of southern peninsular India. Normal to above normal maximum temperatures are expected across the country in the month of June.
At 49.4 degrees, Rajasthan's Phalodi was the warmest place in the country. The number of heat stroke patients in Rajasthan has increased from 2,809 to 3,622. At least 8 more locations in the desert state recorded temperatures above 48 degrees. Here are 5 states which recorded the highest temperatures. Even the hills of Himachal Pradesh experienced sizzling temperatures. Una sizzled at 44 degrees, while Mandi recorded a high of 39.4 degrees. Delhi's health minister has announced that government-run hospitals will reserve 2 beds each for heat stroke patients. The scorching heat has prompted the Haryana government to advance summer vacations in state-run and private schools.
The deadly heat wave is further testing power grids and leading to water shortages in parts of the country. Well, according to the Central Water Commission, water storage in 150 major reservoirs in India dropped to just 24% of their live storage last week. The intense heat has already driven India's power demand to 239.96 gigawatts, the highest so far this season. Experts predict that power demand could rise even further and surpass the all-time high of 243.27 gigawatts recorded in September 2023. Meanwhile, in neighboring Pakistan, temperatures are rising above 52 degrees Celsius in Pakistan's southern province of Sindh. This is the highest reading of the summer and close to the country's record high amid an ongoing heat wave in Mohenjo-daro, a town in Sindh known for its archaeological sites, where the temperatures rose as high as 52.2 degrees Celsius.
The heat wave is now expected to subside in Mohenjo-daro and surrounding areas, but another spell is expected to hit other areas in Sindh, including the capital, Karachi. At least 21 people have been killed across the central United States, and this as tornadoes and other extreme storms hit several states, including Texas, Arkansas and Oklahoma.
According to the officials, rescue efforts were ongoing and hundreds of thousands of people were left without power after the storm struck the southern plains region there.
Now, in the latest, an eyewitness captured a tornado churning near Mountain View, Missouri.
The Texas governor signed a decree for 4 counties that frees up money and staff to help people whose homes were damaged or destroyed.
This storm that we are talking about right now is a storm where the tornadic activity traversed about 50 miles. That may not include even further areas around here where there is even more damage being reported.
The twister destroyed homes and a gas station and overturned vehicles on an interstate highway. Tens of thousands of residents were also reported without power across the region.
In Oklahoma, at least 2 people died after a tornado hit the Mesa County. Roads were inaccessible and power lines were also down in the city, which led officials in the town of Claremore to announce the city was shut down due to the damage.
In Arkansas, 8 people have been killed in the storms in the early hours of Sunday. Officials said by evening over 80,000 customers in Arkansas were without power. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders toured Benton County after deadly storms hit the area. And lastly, in Kentucky, at least one death was reported due to storms. And as the search teams picked through the wreckage, the Kentucky governor declared a state of emergency, citing multiple reports of wind damage and tornadoes.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York on the climate change that's happening in the United States of America.
Severe weather disrupted Memorial Day travel plans for millions of Americans, with flight delays and ground stops at major airports across the Midwest and here on the East Coast as well. These storms followed a deadly weekend that saw at least 23 people killed. Heavy rain, damaging winds, and hail are still expected for us here on the East Coast as those weather conditions move towards us. And while airlines were prepared for disruptions, still flights were delayed at major airports in LaGuardia and JFK, in and around New York, and others as well. The governors of Kentucky and other states have declared a state of emergency, and President Biden on Monday offered his condolences to those affected and pledged federal support as needed. There's a weather advisory here in New York for the remainder of the evening on Monday. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION The World as well.
Drone footage has revealed the aftermath of the deadly Texas tornado. Take a look.
Now let's take a look at all the news from the world of technology. Well, China has been cracking down on influencers who flaunt lavish lifestyle on social media platforms. The Cyberspace Administration of China has started a campaign to stop social media users from promoting or showing off wealth. Chinese social media platforms like Weibo and Douyin have introduced new measures to discourage social media users from showcasing a lavish lifestyle.
Weibo's list of conduct that could see influencers barred includes showing off luxury homes and cars to promote products, flaunting large amounts of cash, and posting minors using luxury goods. In 2021, China had launched similar measures to curb unethical content by influencers. Previously, the Cyberspace Administration had barred celebrities from showing off wealth and extravagant pleasure on social media.
According to a report, cyber criminals launched an average of nearly 9,000 online attacks every day in 2023. These attacks mostly targeted Indian businesses. The report from Kaspersky also revealed that in 2023, more than 3 million web threats had been detected and blocked for businesses in India. This was a 47% increase compared to 2022. The report explained that web-based threats are cybersecurity risks causing unwanted events or actions through the internet. These threats are made possible by end-user vulnerabilities, web service, or the web service themselves. Cyber experts emphasize that with the government ramping up efforts to strengthen the digital economy and infrastructure, businesses should prioritize strengthening their cyber defenses as well.
This is Jordan Marotta, a 5-year-old. Jordan was born without a hand. He previously used a prosthesis but abandoned it due to its lack of functionality. This is where technology came into the picture. Marotta is believed to be the youngest person in the world to wear a bionic arm. developed by Open Bionics, a UK-based company. The 3D printed prosthesis uses sensors to detect muscular contractions in the arm, converting the contractions into intuitive bionic hand movements. The bionic arm allows Marotta to control the fingers and grab objects with both hands. The custom-made hero arm looks straight out of a superhero movie, designed in similar colors as the Iron Man suit, that is red and gold. The bionic arm has earned Marotta superhero status among his friends. Elon Musk's startup XAI has secured $6 billion in Series funding.
Well, this propels XAI to a post-money valuation of $24 billion. XAI plans to use these funds to bring its first goods to market, build advanced infrastructure, and also increase their research for future technologies.
Now, the race for AI supremacy extends beyond software development. Cutting-edge hardware is crucial for training and running powerful AI models. NVIDIA's upcoming Blackwell B200 graphics cards, priced at $30,000 to $40,000, represent the high cost of entry in this high-stakes competition. And reports suggest that XAI may require 100,000 of NVIDIA's current H100 chips to power an upgraded version of its Grok chatbot within supercomputer. This ambitious plan means immense resources needed to build and maintain cutting-edge AI systems, with a planned launch of the new data center targeted for the fall of 2025. XAI is making a significant investment in hardware infrastructure.
The battle for AI dominance extends beyond XAI. Big tech companies like Microsoft, Alphabet and Apple, they're also pouring billions into AI research and growth. This fierce competition is driving innovation across the field. Companies like Apple are reportedly mulling integrating both OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini AI into its upcoming iOS 18.
This intense competition will likely benefit consumers through faster advancements in areas like natural language processing, computer vision and robotics. However, the high cost of hardware and talent acquisition may create barriers for smaller players in this rapidly evolving field.
Well, now let's look at the watch this week for cues on the US Federal Reserve's rate path. The Fed's favorite inflation measure is expected to show a little respite from stubborn price pressures.
And this supports a central banker's caution in lowering interest rates. Take a look at this report.
Economists' forecast for Friday's core PCE price index would indicate a 0.2% increase for April. That would be the lowest increase seen thus far this year. The Fed's first-line inflation gauge offers a more accurate picture of core inflation. According to Bloomberg's estimate, the PCE price index as a whole likely increased 0.3% for the third consecutive month. The disparity between the relatively flat readings in the last 3 months of 2023 and the increases this year highlights the inconsistent headway the Fed has made in its fight against inflation. The Fed's benchmark interest rate has been at a 2-decade high since July. Chair Jerome Powell emphasized the importance of waiting for more evidence. That inflation is consistently heading towards the 2% target before acting on rate cuts. Annual increases in the PCE pricing measure of 2.7%. And the core metric of 2.8% are forecast to line up with levels witnessed last month. Minutes from the latest Fed meeting show that officials have been discussing the possibility of keeping rates higher for longer. Many policymakers are also questioning whether the current policy stance is restrictive enough to achieve their inflation objective. Expenditure and income data for households will be released with the latest inflation estimates. The data will shed light on service spending following the previously announced flat retail sales in April. This comes even as demand expanded at a strong rate in the March quarter. Other data for the week include revised gross domestic product on Thursdays for the March quarter. Economists forecast growth probably cooled from the government's initial estimates. The Fed on Wednesday will issue its beige book summary of economic conditions. Investors will focus for any clues from their speeches on the Fed's rate path and the timing of the first rate cut. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Rafael Nadal's journey at this year's French Open ended at the first hurdle. The record 14-time champion lost in straight sets to world number 4, Alexander Zverev.
The 22-time Grand Slam winner has refused to confirm if this was his last French Open appearance, but he plans to play in the Olympics